we are used to seeing this as a whole, sadly, but especially during that pandemic, boy, I just felt like I was seeing a deluge. It was so many traumatic images. And I was like, I just want to present something to Black and brown and queer people who are the most underrepresented in America. I want to give them images of love and of support and of thriving and of trauma-free. I just want to provide something trauma-free and joyful, because there's this Maya Angelou quote about, joy is one of the biggest acts of resistance that we can present, is living joyfully amid all the fighting that we're doing for equality.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Pop Culture Planet, a video podcast centered around diverse voices and representation in Hollywood. I'm your host, Kristen Maldonado, a TV film critic and champion for inclusion. And I'm very excited that we are wrapping up our Latinx Heritage Month coverage with our very own Tia Glo, Gloria Calderón Kellett, who is best known for show running One Day at a Time. She has a new project out called With Love. You might have seen her recently on My Block and so much more. She is such a pioneer in the industry, such a legend, and I am so excited to share this conversation with you. I'd love to just go back a bit and just hear from you about what your relationship with your Latinx heritage is like.
I'm the daughter of Cuban immigrants, which really is kind of the fingerprints of everything in my life are really through that. My lenses of an American who grew up here. I was born here. My parents came in 1962 during Operation Pedro Pan. And at this time, everybody's Latino American story is so different. And at that time, Miami's not what it was in the 60s. It was really farmland and orange groves. And so when 14,000 Cuban kids came in and then their families started coming in, there was no infrastructure. There were no apartment buildings. There were some, but not enough for all of those people. So different churches took them in all over the country. That's why the Cuban diaspora is so spread out. And largely it is in Miami and New Jersey, but we are everywhere. So my family and a bunch of other Cuban families ended up in Portland, Oregon. And that's where I was born. So I was born in the West Coast, and I'm a West Coast Cuban. I lived in Portland, and then we moved to San Diego for high school, and then I came to Los Angeles. And with the exception of a few years in London for grad school, I've been an Angelino for a long time. Now the longest I've lived anywhere is here. So my relationship with Latinidad for me was my parents spoke Spanish in the house. So did my abuelita and abuelito. I would tend to respond in English. So I understand fluently, pero para hablar tengo que pensar. I can do it, but it's I really got to think about it. And it was just something that we were always super proud of. They just loved being Cuban and loved sharing it with us. Food, music was just around me my whole life. I mean, my parents convinced me it was a superpower being Cuban. So it was a very positive experience. And it was really interesting because when I moved to San Diego, that was the first time I really got to interact with other Latinos that were not Cuban. I mean, I knew a couple of Mexicans and Puerto Ricans in Oregon because they'd be married in or somebody, but for the most part, it was wildly, overwhelmingly Cuban. So when I moved to San Diego was the first time I was near a border. And that was so interesting to see how different the relationship was in a border town like San Diego, and how a lot of people felt shame in speaking Spanish or felt a tremendous amount of heaviness carrying their Latinidad. And that was the first time I had seen it when I was 14 years old. Before then, I had no idea. I mean, I didn't experience negativity growing up at all until we moved to San Diego. And then my brother, who's much darker than me, I'm the Blanquita in the family. My brother's really dark, how different he was treated. And it was very eye-opening to see how just living in another part of the country had a very different impact on how people felt about their identity.
Wow, absolutely. I mean, I think that's something so many people can relate to, even though we're all Latino, we're not a monolith. So everyone's had these different experiences of some are super positive, some are maybe not so positive. I mean, I grew up in a very white area where I can't speak Spanish, and it's my downfall. I'm I curse you parents. Why? But they didn't, speak it at home either.
They were trying to survive. I mean, that's why it's I love having these conversations because I think that we need to release all of the intergenerational shame, all of it. Latinos that don't speak Spanish, that's okay. They're not any less Latino. Those of us like me that speak it, but kind of it's not perfect, that's okay too. And then there's the people that speak perfect, and that's okay too. There's people with accents, and that's okay too. Like all of us are should be banding arms and not shaming each other, because out there is shaming us enough for things that we don't want to be shamed for. So like, yeah with the shame. Yeah, like I'm done with it.
You mentioned like, you know, the celebration and the music and everything that was in your household. So I'm curious, like where you found your love of writing and entertainment, and if that was kind of like instilled at home or if you found that somewhere else.
Definitely at home. Definitely. It was a bunch of, are you kidding? It was a bunch of loud people telling stories all the time. That's what my life was. Loud people telling stories. So if you wanted to, you know, have any attention whatsoever, you better be funny and you better have a good story. So I loved it. I loved it. I was singing and dancing when I was a little kid. I would sing at malls. I would dance at nursing homes. I've been singing and dancing and doing that since I was a little kid. And then as I got to be, you know, I would say around 11 or 12, I was more interested in the storytelling aspect, which at the time presented itself as acting, because I didn't know, watching TV, I don't think I really could connect that somebody wrote that. I think I thought the actors make up those words. And, you know, I don't think it really, I had put it together as a young kid. And then when I got up to be about, you know, 12 or 13, I was like, oh, written by, like somebody wrote those. Interesting. And when I came to Hollywood, it was initially to be an actor. And I, you know, went to grad school in London. I classically trained at a proper drama school, and I came back. And nobody wanted me to audition for normal parts. All of the parts were a gangbanger's girlfriend, a gangbanger's sister, a prostitute. I mean, it was just like, blew my mind.
Wow.
And then the other thing that was interesting is I would go in and they'd be like, oh, you're too white. Are you Latina? I'm like, yeah, I'm a full Latina. Yes. Yep, I sure am. And I'd speak Spanish, and they'd be like, oh, well, your accent is different. So I was too white to be Latina in Hollywood standards. But the parts that they were presenting were wildly marginalized and frustrating. So I just decided, I guess I got to hold the pen, man. I guess I got to start writing. I guess I need to be on that side if I'm going to make change in my lifetime. So that's when I made the shift.
Wow. But I love that, because, you know, it just shows you have all the different skills. You could do all of it. It's just really getting that experience, that opportunity to do it, you know, to write the stories that you want to see. Oh, wow. That's incredible. So now you mentioned obviously seeing, you know, these stereotypes basically for the characters that you were originally going for. You know, you've been in the industry for a while now. So have you noticed a change, or do you see a change in how we're represented?
I mean, you know, look, I see the tiniest, I see a little bit of change. And then when there's a little bit of change, I feel like Hollywood goes, we did it, but it's not enough.
Nope.
So for me, look, we're 20% of the population. The network television is white. I mean, I don't even see Asian people, Native people, you know, Muslims. I don't see that on mainstream television either. It's not just Latinidad, right? We have to do a better job of overall representation of what this country is. American Latinos make up 19% of this country, and we're not seeing it reflected. So for me, when it's reflected in that way, great. It's not yet. I think we get one show this fall that is about a Latino family. We have a couple of Latino-led shows, which is very exciting. Jaina and Station 19 and Rosalind and Fantasy Island is wonderful. That's one person, right? Like we need more. And I think also those stories are not necessarily centered on their Latinidad, which is okay. But then you need to have more. You just need more. We just need more. So yes, I think it's getting better. It's getting better in that people are talking about it for the first time, I think, in a real way, and starting to understand the importance of it. But we still have to hold these studios and networks accountable in putting money towards our stories, because we show up at the box office. We show up opening weekend. 1 in 4 ticket buyers is Latino, but we are showing up for content that is not made for us. And I think that getting loud and saying that we are tired of this erasure is important.
Do you have a feeling of like why this is kind of happening? Like why, they'll give us one and then be like, never mind, we take it back.
I have theories. I don't have anything that is truly supported in data. My theories are we're not a monolith, right? It would be easier if we were, in a way. We're not. We're 20 plus countries under this umbrella of American Latinidad. So you can't make one thing and expect all of those people to be represented with that one thing. Mm-hmm. But what happens is that's what they're trying to target. They want all of us to show up to it. And I think there is messaging that I'm trying to do within the community to say, let's show up, because right now they think we're all Mexican anyway. So let's show up, and then we can start to, if that one does well, then we can do one that's Dominican and one that's Nicaraguan and one that's, let's just start to support our stuff when we love it, when we're feeling mm-hmm. like it's done correctly, so that they know, oh, they're showing up for stuff. Because I've had executives say to my face, oh, we don't make stuff for you guys because you don't care. You don't care, so you'll show up to our stuff. Why mm-hmm. would we do that and maybe take a loss? You show up for our stuff. So it's like, man, that's rough. That is hard to hear. So again, these are all just guessing games, but I certainly see myself represented in a lot of just marginalized stories. I see myself presented in stories about women. Even white women's stories are at least about the woman, that's still wildly underrepresented, how many real women we get as the lead of television shows. Mm-hmm. So, I think it's a time to sort of band together and support one another in order to see real change.
You mentioned, seeing people that, you felt represented by. I'm curious, do you remember the first time you saw a character or a story that you felt represented by positively?
Rita Moreno, West Side Story. 100% Rita and Electric Company. Rita was it for a minute, and she was so magical and so incredible. Like, what a wonderful piece of representation. And then probably Gloria Estefan. Gloria was amazing for me because she had my name and she was Cuban, and her family called her Glorita, which all my family call me Glorita. So those two women were really, it was pretty amazing to me. But the first time I heard the name Calderon on screen was the drug dealer in Miami Vice. It was still exciting. You're like, oh, at least there's a Calderon in there, but really, he's got to be the drug dealer. Come on, Miami Vice. You can own a restaurant or something? Be a lawyer? Come on.
Spinning off of that, you are creating so many incredible projects that are giving, various versions of Latinos' voices, and we're able to see us in positive light. That's not always about being a gangbanger, being a maid, and so I'd love to hear a little bit more about your new show that you're working on with Love, that not only are you, writing and producing, but also starring in. So what can you tell us about that?
Really, With Love came out of the pandemic and the collective trauma, I think, that everyone was feeling. There was incredible awakening, and also a lot of consistent images of Black and brown bodies on screen being violated in some way. Like, we are used to seeing this as a whole, sadly, but especially during that pandemic, boy, I just felt like I was seeing a deluge. It was so many traumatic images. And I was like, I just want to present something to Black and brown and queer people who are the most underrepresented in America. I want to give them images of love and of support and of thriving and of trauma-free. I just want to provide something trauma-free and joyful, because there's this Maya Angelou quote about, joy is one of the biggest acts of resistance that we can present. Is living joyfully amid all the fighting that we're doing for equality and equity, right? So that's really where it stemmed from. And so it's a love story. It's a romantic comedy. It is centered on this Mexican American family that live in Portland, Oregon. I grew up in Portland, so I wanted to show that Latinos are everywhere, and they're in there's also generational wealth there, because the abuelos came from Mexico and started this restaurant that was thriving because there were no Mexicans in Portland, right? The only Mexican restaurant for years. And then the kids took it over, and now the grandkids are taking it over. So you have this amazing three generations of family. And then you also have, Jorge, the son, is bringing home a boy for the first time, bringing home his boyfriend for the first time. They've been out for a decade. No, there's no coming out story. Everyone's been out. Their trans cousin has been trans for a decade. Nobody cares anymore. It's all that's left is the love. All that's left is the love and wanting to see these people thrive. So the abuela and abuelo, everyone's good. Everyone just wants their grandkids to have an opportunity to thrive and to love and to live, with abundance. So it's just fun to have the center of the story, not the best friend, the center of the story, are Black and brown and queer Latinos.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And I love the theme of like, right, every episode is like a different holiday, which I think is so fun because we don't ever really get to see ourselves in these like fun holiday situations like Christmas and Halloween. And only recently are we starting to see that. So I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see like a little Christmas, like Latino love story.
When we were shooting, because we do the uvas, we do the uvas at New Year's, and nobody had seen the uvas on TV ever. I don't know if we're the first show to actually show the uvas, but like everyone's like, this is a thing. Like, I've never seen, like, because you shotgun the uvas, we do the maleta walk, we do the, like all of the little things we got to show, and it was so fun to be able to show these very culturally specific things that are that I think a lot of America and the world, I think, is going to be delighted by.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you have such an incredible cast too. I mean, Constance Marie, Martin Delicado, like, ooh, so many like people that, we've just like grown up with. Very, very exciting. And I actually have a Tia Gladys, so I was like, oh, you're my aunt. Like,
Tia Gladys, man. She's like the single Tia that's like out there doing the things and drinking too much, and we love her anyway. So it was a really fun part to get to play.
Oh my goodness. I love that. And I love that, you can, because you have that background in acting, you're like, write something for myself. Is that's like the goal maybe down the line, is to kind of be able to write, direct, produce, and act in all of your own projects?
Yeah, I would love to participate in it. I mean, if it's right. This one was this part came up, and Andy, who's my co-executive producer, he was like, this one, you should do this part. This is a part that you should do. And so it felt like, all right, it's not going to take too much time away from the room, because Gladys comes in and says her little line and then leaves, So it was kind of the perfect amount for this show, but maybe more in the future. Sure. If it's right, if it feels like the right fit.
I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about One Day at a Time, which, has been so iconic and has just gained such an incredible audience. And I think is still living on now, where people just, love it. And, I'd love to hear about, what that show has meant for you and for your career.
Oh my God. Well, it's changed my life. I mean, it's changed my life. People have been wanting me to write my family for a really long time. And I had heard word from other Latinos who were like, listen, you get to spend that card once. So you want to be very careful when you do it, because it's hard, because it's so personal. So I really held off for a very long time. And it was really, I was in a moment, it's really magical when I think about it, because I was in a moment where I felt very ready. I was like, now it's time. I'm ready to write my family. I would like it to be a multicam sitcom, because that's what I grew up on and loved. I think I'm ready to do this. And I'm not kidding you, that week I got a phone call.
Wow.
To meet Norman. So it's almost as if I needed to announce it to my ancestors so they could make it happen. But it felt that sort of serendipitous. And, when I sat down with Norman, he was so disarming and listened and was very eager to take on everything that I wanted to take on. We were just very in line. And then Mike Royce, who was already a part of the project, he and I sat down, and immediately the first words out of his mouth were, we're partners. We're 50-50 partners. This is not like, you're not here as the vanity card. You're here because we are going to do this together, and I'm going to teach you how to do this job, and you're going to be able to do it for the rest of your life. And then he stood by those words. So, I was really fortunate to have such incredible allies lift me up and listen to me. And we got to make the show of my dreams. I loved every moment. And I was so present. A lot of times we're in this industry, we are just so crazy with all of the stuff that's happening. I was so present for every moment of that, and every moment of With Love. I was so there. And so those memories are just going to nourish me forever. They added time to my life, for sure.
That's amazing. I love that. And, I'd love to hear, for people who want to do what you're doing, that feel like, how can I get into this? Is your advice for them on how to, break out?
Look, I didn't know anybody in this industry either when I got here. It took 20 years to be sitting in this chair. So I would say it doesn't have to take you 20 years. There's so many resources that didn't exist when I was coming up. The first of which is a free masterclass I have on YouTube that I partnered with Beto Like through the BuzzFeed network. And Beto Like put out 11 episodes, I think, maybe it's 12 episodes of me called Hollywood 101. And I talk about everything I know. It's like having a little cafecito with me. Just giving you basics about moving to Los Angeles or how to get an agent or what to expect. I kind of go through everything that I used to be able to sit down and have coffee with people. And it was always the same kind of questions that they had. So it's a good starter. You can start there. Then I host, Tia Glow sessions, Ask Tia Glow Anything on Twitter. I'm always available on Twitter. Even if you miss a Tia Glow session, I will answer it a few days later. Because I don't want this to be privileged information. I want this to be information that people can get. You want a book on screenwriting? I'll give you my recommendation. And I don't know everything, but what I know, I'm happy to share. So, those things. Then there are things like, you can watch any show now on Hulu, on YouTube. That was not the case when I was coming up. I had to go to the Museum of TV and Radio and check them out. Check out, and then you'd sit at a little booth with
the Paley Center. Yeah.
Center, baby. That's how I would sit in there for hours, like making my notes. Mm-hmm. And so nowadays people can really go through, they can get access to scripts so they can see what a script looks like through the internet. You can watch stuff and break it down with a script if you can. And there's so many ways to start the process that way.
I love the Paley. I remember like sitting in the Paley Center being like, I'm going to try to watch Pushing Daisies because I can't watch it anywhere else.
Yes, it's so good.
And now, going off of that, are there any resources that you feel that you feel very strongly about in terms of like, Latino representation for people who want to, connect with, organizations or places like that?
Follow all of the Latino organizations, the National Hispanic Foundation for the Arts, the National Association of Latino Independent Producers, the National Hispanic Media Coalition, like all of them have programs and are doing really great work. Follow them, go to their website, see what they're up to. They do a lot of talks and I do talks for all of them. And all of them are really trying to fight this fight. So there could be entry level positions through all of those. I believe all of them have programs now that are helping young storytellers to get their stories in front of the right people. And I would start there. My sister Tanya Saracho has her Ojalá Ignition Lab, so apply to that. We have, the Latinx, the Untitled Latinx Project, which is an organization that I'm a part of with Tanya and many other Latina showrunners. We partner with the Blacklist and with the Latin Tracking Board to put together opportunities as well. So we are announcing something this winter, so people can be on the lookout for that. If you follow me on Twitter and Instagram, we will be announcing more soon. But there is an opportunity this winter that we want people to get their scripts ready for.
And just to wrap things up, I'm curious if there's any Latino creators out there that you admire, that you want to like shout out, anybody that you are like is doing amazing work?
There's so many. Well, I'll tell you who has stuff out now. Sierra Teller Ornelas has Rutherford Falls on Peacock. It is wonderful. It centers on the Native experience, which is so rare. We need to support our Indigenous community. And she's just a badass and I love her. Ilana Pena has Diary of a Future President out now on Disney Plus. Gentified is coming soon. That's Linda and Marvin, who I adore. Gentified is coming soon. On My Block is currently out. I'm actually in On My Block this season. I play Tia Lupe, Jasmine's Tia. Those are like the three that are big and out right now. So support those. And I have something coming soon. And check that out December 17th.
Yes, amazing. Thank you so much for your time and just, congratulations on everything. Obviously, you're killing it and inspiring so many people as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristen.
If you like this one, you can check out more Pop Culture Planet right over here or on your favorite podcast listening platforms. See ya.